Today's video is going to be a little bit different than usual, and that's because Magnolia County is dying. That means that we can't talk about Chuckles or James or Daryl or Mara Elias or any of the other storylines I'd normally cover, because if we aren't careful, this build could become unsalvageable. Now, you may have already noticed the warning signs in earlier videos, like the commercial zones near the new train station refusing to fill in, even with what looked like strong demand, like seeing thousands of residents trying to leave town near the auto plant. In fact, thousands of people are leaving the county every year at a pace that seems to be only accelerating, like seeing office demand completely evaporating even after reducing office taxes. But perhaps most concerningly, the population keeps declining, even when adding new housing and even when the UI shows an increase. And interestingly, many of the folks leaving are our educated residents, the same folks who were previously overrepresented in our county's demographics. I believe our situation may be similar to what Picana faced in Cape Lemon, and if you saw his video, you know how that ended. I refuse that fate. So recently, I've been doing a fair amount of troubleshooting, and I think I found a way to resolve the county's many issues with a special thanks to the City Skylines subreddit. It turns out the problem is something that I've never personally experienced before, but something that I've heard of others running into. It's a problem that I thought was fixed, but sadly, it doesn't appear to be resolved. So we'll go over what the issue is and provide the fix. In addition to that, Klyte, the maker of the Right Everywhere mod, pointed out that I gave some incorrect info in the last video regarding adding logos to transit vehicles. So I'll clarify the correct process at the end of this video, but of course, none of that's gonna matter if we can't save Magnolia County first. And if you're hoping that we can save it, hit the like button. And perhaps video likes will appease Myrtle and lead to a positive result. And consider subscribing too. It helps the channel grow, and I'd really appreciate it. But before we jump in, this is, without a doubt, the busiest time of the year for me. The kids just started school again, activities are back in full swing, and we're all adjusting to the new schedule. Now, I don't know about you, when life gets hectic, the first thing I sacrifice is taking care of myself. It's easy to grab fast food, skip workouts, and put everything else first. And that's where today's video sponsor, Factor, comes in. With Factor, I've got restaurant quality meals ready in just 2 minutes. I'm not giving up quality or variety. In fact, Factor now has over 80 rotating weekly meals, with even more seafood options and Mediterranean-style dishes than ever before. And just look at the variety I got in my last box. Chorizo and black bean queso fundido, which was outstanding. Truffle butter filet mignon, which was as good as it looks. Home-style turkey and gravy with cranberries, which warms my little Wisconsinite heart. And blueberry pancakes with cheddar scrambled eggs, because sometimes I want breakfast all day. This has been huge for me because I want to stick to good routines. I want to keep working towards my wellness goals. And when life gets busy, convenience counts. And Factor makes it easy for me. They can do the same for you. Just head to factor75.com or click on the link below and use code CityPlannerPlaysFB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code CityPlannerPlaysFB50 at factor75.com. A huge thank you to longtime channel partner Factor for sponsoring another video. Now let's get back to it. I thought it'd be best to start here because this area is really emblematic of some of the issues that we're facing here in Magnolia County. Look at all of the people leaving town. All of these people are moving out, and you might think this will eventually end. But here's the thing, it doesn't. All of these people that are moving, they will continue to spawn. So this has me thinking, why are all of these people leaving? Must be something that I'm doing. So I spent hours trying to troubleshoot, trying to meet needs, looking at these bars down here and noticing the low density residential demand keeps going up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. And we have no office demand even though we cut taxes. But then I noticed this, all of these first floor commercial units are vacant. And that doesn't make any sense because we have strong commercial demand. And if we click into here, we can see that there's a lack of local demand, but a ton of hotel demand. Now, I thought that diving into InfoLoom might help me out, but I'll be honest, looking at this makes it seem like things are okay as well. And that got me doing a little bit of Googling. I ended up on Reddit where I saw this post. And this really stood out to me for one reason. When I revamped the downtown, I added UK mixed residential basically everywhere because it's just really attractive. These assets look exactly like what I'd expect to see in any small town in America, in any mid-sized city, in kind of a neighborhood Main Street sort of area. They just fit really well. They're beautiful assets. But thought I'd check to see if these were causing any issues. So in my initial test of this, removing all of these assets seemed to resolve a lot of our issues. So I'm going to experiment a bit. We're going to go through the downtown area and remove 100% of these UK mixed residential assets. Now, these are located in other parts of the community, but the reason why I think we only have to remove them here is I wasn't really experiencing these issues until I flooded this area with this zoning category. So let's give it a shot. Now that I've removed most of the UK mixed use throughout Paradise Bay, I'm gonna let things run for a few minutes to see where things shake out in terms of our population and our overall demand. I let this simulate for about 15 minutes, and our population has grown by about 2,000 from the start of the episode. Now you might just be thinking, I just speed ran the revitalization of Detroit, removed a whole bunch of dilapidated buildings that were vacant, and the city has come back to life. But that is not what happened. All of these buildings that I removed over here had people and businesses in them, and there were a bunch of buildings that were vacant throughout the entire city. So removing all of these businesses and all of these people seems to have fixed the city, and it's bigger and better than ever. Now, the reason why I decided to do it in this way and take the time to sit and wait is to demonstrate that that zoning category was indeed the problem. Because if it weren't the problem, this wouldn't have happened. We would have less population overall. Let's also take a look at this. I'm gonna guess that we've got some businesses over here. Indeed we do. These have finally filled in. So where this leaves me is not thinking that the UK mixed residential category is broken. I actually don't think that's the case. I believe this is actually a problem with the game itself in the way that it's handling the zoning category. It's a little bit different than all the other mixed residential categories in that it's smaller. All the assets are smaller and the numbers are lower. And I think that that is causing conflicts in the simulation. So I think that I am not going to zone in that category like I was, but I do have a way to use those assets. And that's all thanks to the static ploppables mod. So we're going to be adding some of those assets back in as static ploppables. And then we'll use our modular zoning blocks to add in mixed residential right back into those static ploppables. And the upshot of that is we can actually add in mixed office if we'd like as well. The thing is, our office demand has not come back, and I think I have a way to fix this, all thanks to the Citizen Entity Cleaner. Now, the Citizen Entity Cleaner is a mod that cleans up stuck citizens in your city, and it's highly experimental. They say to make a backup of your save before you use the mod, and they give you all sorts of warnings about what it can do to your save. But here's the thing, it'll also remove homeless citizens and kind of reset all those stuck sims, and I think it's exactly what we need. So the first thing I want to do from the pause menu is find Citizen Entity Cleaner and then refresh the counts because I want to know how many stuck citizens we have. 23,000. That is wild. So we're going to clean up our citizens, and it says back up your save first. I've already done that. And now we've cleaned everything up. Now that we resume, we can see that thousands of people have disappeared. That is not a problem. They were stuck citizens and people trying to leave the community. So I'm gonna let things simulate once again and see where we shake out. I let this simulate for about another 20 minutes and we've continued to grow. In fact, at this point, the population has grown by over 4,000 since the start of the episode. And that's after removing a whole bunch of these stuck citizens and removing over 100 buildings. So we're in a really interesting spot. I decided to come over here though, where we started the episode, to take a look at this street, because one thing you'll notice is that where we had gigantic plumes of people leaving the community before, we're no longer seeing those. So it seems like we're moving in the right direction. So that does lead me to believe that that zoning category was creating all sorts of issues, as were the stuck citizens. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that we still haven't seen our office demand recover, and it looks like the primary reason for that is a lack of high-skill labor. But bluntly, I'm not all that concerned because if we take a look, we can see that the highly educated population makes up 10% of our population now, which is more than we had at the start of the episode. So we're moving in the right direction. And ultimately, I think that we probably just need to wait things out. And ultimately, while we're waiting for those people to move into the community, I think we've got an opportunity to fill in some of these areas that we hollowed out. So with the problem fixed, let's move on to filling in the gaps. Between Lake Street, Little Nantucket, and downtown, we've raised about 16 blocks, so we've got a lot to fill in. Now, there are 3 different approaches as I see it that we could take to fill these blocks in. The first would be to use picker and plop the growables to try to just fill the areas in with nearby buildings. That would be very quick, it would look really good, although it might feel a bit homogeneous and really not address the best land use for the area. Option 2 would be to fill these areas in with primarily row homes. Now, the whole reason that might work is because right now the reason that we don't have office demand is a lack of high-skilled labor. I think if we added a whole bunch of row homes, we'd add a whole bunch of high-skilled labor to our population, people moving into our community that have education. So that's something that we might do some of, but probably not the right solution for everywhere. The third option is to use static ploppables. So these are static buildings that have just basically shells of the UK region pack, and then we could add a modular zoning block to the inside to make it functional. This is something that I want to do, but probably not everywhere because it's a little bit pokey, and I'll explain why in just a minute. But let's begin right here, and we'll kind of take an all of the above approach. So for example, I could just use the picker, grab this asset right here, and plop it right here. That filled in a third of a block. That is incredibly quick. And it was incredibly fast to fill in this entire area with row homes, but again, probably not the appropriate solution everywhere. So let's try out the static ploppables, and there are really 2 different routes that we could take here. So we have the static ploppables zone buildings. You could use this if you wanted to. It's broken into the different zoning categories that you have. Just find the mixed residential, commercial, select the UK pack, and then all of your assets are here. Now, this is fine, but there is one limitation here. I don't have the ability to set depth. So if I want to do that, I have to use Find It. And the first thing I want to do is make sure that I'm completely backed out of the static ploppables menu. Then I'll go into Find It Alone, select all buildings, and then I'm going to toggle the filters panel. This is really important because the static ploppables don't have all of the attributes that the zone buildings have. And if I go into mixed buildings, all of my static ploppables disappear. So I'm just going to select all the buildings, then select the UK pack. I know this is a static ploppable because it's pink like that. Now, unfortunately, this just kind of shows me all of the static ploppables. So I have to look through the names to find the right filtering category. And it looks like all of these are named Town Center. So I'll just search for town. And now I've filtered to just these assets. Now, the benefit of doing this is that now I can just hit the L button after selecting an asset and randomize through these. Now, the reason why L works for me is I set that as my random hotkey within Find It, so L might not be yours. The other advantage of going through Find It is that I can now set the lot depth. So if I wanted to go for 4 units, now I've narrowed down to just the 4-unit buildings, and I can now filter through these. Okay, so now I've filled in these 2 blocks right here, and I want to show you a major limitation of the static ploppables. You can see that there's no propping and no storefronts. So this is why this might not be the correct approach for all of these blocks, because this would take a heck of a long time. But there are a couple of ways that you can clean things up and make it faster. So I'm going to go back into Find It, and instead of searching for town, I'm going to search for storefront. And I just had to make sure that my lot depth was not set there, and now I have these different storefronts. You'll notice it says 1 by 1 and 2 by 1. Those are the different sizes that we have for the storefronts. So I can randomize these just like I did before and plop it right in there. Here's the thing, you might have noticed it's not showing up. That is because it's set too far back. So we've got to be really careful with these. And for just that one, I'll use Move It to fix things. But for these ones, I want to be a bit more deliberate. So on this empty street right over here, I'm going to plop all of these. So I know that I have a 1-unit wide building there, then a couple of 2-unit wide buildings, and then 3 1-unit wide buildings. And now I should be able to use Move It on all of these and Control H them to these buildings and bring them right in. And that wasn't so bad. And now I can make micro adjustments here if I need to. Now, there is another limitation of this, and you're probably seeing it right now. All these buildings are going to have the exact same advertisements. you could place your own manually. Now we're really getting into a lot of micromanagement, and it's just kind of one of the things you'll have to deal with. That said, if you are from the UK, I think I recall Mac Welshman saying that these are either based upon real places in the UK or real places, probably based upon. So there we go. That looks pretty darn good. But here's the thing. This is not functional at all. So we've got to make them functional. So the first thing I would encourage you to do is clear all of your filters and then type in block. And this will bring up all of your modular zoning blocks if you have them installed. So you can see right here, we have a commercial mixed residential block. We could just plop these inside of all of these buildings and they would all become activated with that use. But there are other options that we have that are interesting as a part of this pack, including the office mixed residential block, which is something that I'm probably going to use in some of these buildings. Not a real zoning category, but one that I think should exist. Here's the thing. I want to add these over here so I understand what I'm doing. So I'm going to add 8 in a row. I'll add a couple of offices and a whole bunch of commercial mixed residential. Now, the whole reason I wanted to lay out these zoning blocks right here is that I could take a look at the attributes and make adjustments if necessary. So for instance, if I take a look at this, I can see that it has 7 households and it does have an office in here. It's a software company with 6 of 14 positions filled. Now, if this is enough for me, I can just drag this inside of a building and call it a day. But I could also overlap these if I have anarchy or add other upgrades like parking spots or a parking garage. This is really going to be up to you. I think I'm just going to grab these, Control H them again to the building, and then drag all of these right inside. Now again, if we wanted to activate all the garages, that's something that we can do with the modular zoning blocks. You could also change where pedestrian entrances are. You could set the block further back using the upgrades, but I don't think we have to do any of that with the UK pack. All we have to do is place them inside of the buildings. And this is actually pretty helpful because it means that I can just look at this one right here, plop these inside, and feel pretty good about what we've done. Now, there are 2 more things that we could do just to round things out here. The first would be to add some sort of a surface underneath it. You can see that there's nothing there right now. I could also add some pretty basic props. And if I wanted to go all out, add some signage. And it looks like the small frontway signs are the ones that we'd want to use. And I'll be honest, that looks really, really nice, but that's probably a higher level of detail than I think is appropriate if we're trying to fill in 16 blocks. So I think we're going to try to iterate on the next block and continue the same pattern of those 3 different styles of filling things in, but probably a little bit less detail when we do the static ploppables like this. So I'm going to do the next 3 blocks with a slight iteration. I want to see if using a different storefront will make it a little bit less likely that I need to have all of the signage. And because the zoning is broken up right here, I think I'll use the static ploppables right over here. And then I'm going to zone in some of these other areas. And I think that these blocks were far more successful than the last ones. So let me explain what I did here. Now, obviously, the zone blocks are fairly simple. They turned out well. Not a lot to say about these outside of that I needed to slide things around just to be able to fit in one more row home, which I think made this place feel a bit more filled out. But this block is a bit more interesting. So basically, I decided to use some of the vanilla storefronts. So these are, again, storefronts. That's all I looked for. EU mixed storefront. And I had these line up to the side of the road. So you're able to do that. If you turn on snap to roads, it slides on the side of the road. So you can place it just in front of the building, then use move it to pull it back in, and then use better bulldozer to delete all the signage. And what you end up with is a very clean looking building. And for me, I think if I'm going to do 16 blocks, this is something that I can easily replicate and get a good result. So I think that we've found the way to approach basically the rest of this area. So I'm going to take this pattern and apply it to the rest of Lake Street. And that honestly didn't take all that long, and I think that the results are pretty good. But we do have to check our work with this, so I just like to go down and make sure that all of the storefronts are in place. Last thing I want is for something not to look finished. I also like to make sure that I got surfaces everywhere. And then the final check is looking for the service blocks again, or rather the zoning blocks. If you wanted to use service blocks, you could, and make this a taxi depot or whatever. You could do that, but for the zoning blocks, you can tell if you don't have it because you won't see the zoning color. So always good to go back through. It looks like I missed a couple through here, and I've been adding 2 overlapping because I want there to be higher population numbers in this area. Very, very good. Now, to speed things up in the downtown, I think I am going to try to mostly steal surrounding buildings. There will be a couple of locations where that won't work, but over here, for instance, I think it will be fairly simple. And you know, I ended up going back to the drawing board on basically this entire area. And the whole reason for that is a couple of buildings got way taller than they should have. And I just felt like I was constraining myself to the old building layouts and designs. And it made this really difficult to figure out. So eventually I just basically wiped the whole slate clean, started fresh, and came up with something that I think feels a lot better. Now, obviously, lots of little detail work to do. And whenever you do stuff like this, you got to come back and take a look, particularly when you bump the buildings back like I did. You end up with wonky sidewalks. It's easy enough to fix if you're willing to take a little bit of time. And that, in my opinion, is looking really, really good. So I think that we've taken a bad situation and improved this part of the city. Let's keep it up. Now on these blocks, I think we've got to take the static ploppables and add them back in. That, or there's something else I've been thinking about. There's a couple of northeastern mixed-use buildings that are about the same size that might actually fill these gaps pretty well. And you know, I don't know that these are perfect, but I think that we can make them work, and it's going to fill in those areas pretty nicely. So what I'm going to do is kind of adjust these parking areas, and boom, that's a big drop off right there. But basically, I'll back these up to the assets and get rid of the ones that don't make sense anymore. I'll steal this 2x2 southwestern mixed use, do the exact same thing. And then looking at the front, it's not terrible. I think that that works in that particular location. Now, this, I believe, was a 2x1, and that's only the UK asset pack, so we're going to have to use that. But I can steal this one and put this one over here. And honestly, come up with something that kind of looks better than what used to be there. And then finally, this 1x2 spot, or the 2x1, 1x2. And that's honestly kind of outstanding. Now, these blocks were heavily UK assets. We're going to stick that way, particularly in this area, but I think I'm going to zone this area back here in. And I think that these blocks look basically as good as it did before, maybe even a little bit better. And that's because of the way that static ploppables handle terrain leveling. Now, I use Dome's parking lot assets basically as levelers. And I think that if you're going to use the static ploppables, you're going to have to, and that's because they're non-terrain conforming. So that is something that is worth thinking about when you're using these assets. They are a little bit wonky in that regard. Now, these zone buildings didn't work the way that I had hoped, but that's no worry. We'll just go back to the drawing board. And that's a ton better right there. And that really leaves only 2 more spots. And I decided to fill in both of these areas with northeastern USA row homes. And that leaves us with Little Nantucket. And I think here I'm going to plop 100% of the buildings. I want this to go relatively quickly, and I think that some northeastern commercial and northeastern row homes will accomplish that. Honestly, these changes look pretty darn good. I might like this more than I liked what we had before. And with that, we've filled in all the gaps. So let's move on to our Right Everywhere fixes. On the previous video, we did a number of things with Right Everywhere. We created this sign right here. We created this one right here. Both of those, the instructions were completely fine. But the third thing that we did, which was modify vehicles, that's where my instructions were a little bit off. And that's because I couldn't figure out how to use Right Everywhere to modify these logos on the side of vehicles, short of going into the mod folder itself and modifying the decal within that folder. That's not the best way to do it, and there's a couple of reasons for it. First of all, I was able to revert back to the defaults simply by uninstalling and reinstalling the mod. That means that when the mod updates, there's a chance that you could lose all of your work. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. So basically, you're going to want to go into the Right Everywhere mod, go under City Atlases, and then export the default decals to begin. So for the Metro decals, you could find them right here. For the train company decals, they're right here. So you're going to want to hit the export button and then save this as whatever you want to call it. So you could call it Amtrak train decal if that's what you intend to create, and then save this. Then you'll want to go to your Atlas export folder, and inside of here, you're going to have the templates. These are what you would modify in Photoshop or Affinity or whatever your photo app of choice is. When you're done, you're going to want to grab this entire folder, go to the root directory of Right Everywhere, and paste it into Image Atlases. This is the exact same folder where I have my MBTA logo and the Clearwater Southern sign. Now I've already created both the Amtrak train decal and my MBTA tram decals. Now that I have those created, I just have to go into Prefab Template Setup. From there, I want to select Public Transportation Vehicles, Text, and Decals. Then we'll click on Atlases up here. Now there are a few things that we can replace. We have the Metro Company decals, the Detail decals, which I'm going to go over in just a moment, the train decals, and the tram decals. Now the train and tram decals are the ones that we actually had in the build before. So to modify the train, for instance, I'm going to select this first dropdown and say Current City. I don't want to choose the defaults that come with the module. I want to choose the ones that are from my current city. Then in the second dropdown, I can select my Amtrak train station company decals. For trams, I'll do the exact same thing. Select Current City, and then select the decal that I created from my Atlases folder. And it will change immediately. You could see it change on the vehicle. And one of the main benefits of doing this correctly is that now when I save the game, this will be a part of my save game. Now, before we move on from this mod, there's one more thing that I want to point out. I wasn't sure what the detail decals are. It's really easy to figure out though. All we have to do is go back to City Atlases and then click on Detail Decals, and it will show you the decals that are a part of this set. So if you wanted to modify these, and I'm not 100% sure where they are, but it has something to do with rail, all we'd have to do is go through that export process, modify them, and re-import them, and then we could see the changes. And then I just wanted to verify that it's here on our trains, and indeed it says Amtrak once again. So once again, a huge shout out to Klyte for making this mod. Once you figure it out, it's not all that challenging to use, but it is a little bit daunting at first, so I hope that this is helpful. And again, I'm going to leave Klyte's Ko-Fi link down in the pinned comment below. So if you want to support their endeavors making this mod, you know how to do it. And with that complete, let's make some fixes based on your feedback. There are two changes in particular that I want to make. One that I heard a ton in the comments and one that I only read one person say, but I think it's a really good comment. So the first is about the bus routes. Many of you were very concerned that the bus routes are going through this part of the community and not really stopping at all. So we've got a route that goes out to the business park that you basically get on here at the transit center. You could get on or off right here, but in both Glenmore and Memorial Square, you have no opportunities. That could add on 30 minutes of deadheading or doubling back around for someone, and that's not a good thing. So we're going to add a couple of stops through here. I don't want to go ham, but we will add some. So you can see this route is actually going up and down this street. I'll add a stop right here, and I'll add one more closer to our arterial. Now, with the new way that CS2 handles nodes, these look absolutely crazy. So to fix that, I'm going to anarchy a path in place. Then I'll add street trees to Autumn Street down here. And then I'll delete that path segment. Now, obviously, I could do this in a vanilla game. It would just be considerably harder. But now I was able to get that node in the center here and have a shorter bus bay. And ultimately, that's why we did that. So I'll do the exact same thing over here. Perfect. And we have one more bus route that does this exact same thing. This route right here is a direct line to the airport, and it's just kind of blasting through the community. So if you lived over here, you basically have no access to the service unless you were to take the tram back to the train station and then get on a bus to go to the airport. So obviously that is a poor configuration. So let's add a couple of stops. For this one though, I don't want to overdo it. So I'm probably going to add one down here. And then I'll add one more, maybe right here. And in both cases, I added it right after the intersection and the stoplight. And I was considering adding one right here, but honestly, it's really close to the transit center, so we're not going to worry about it. These two stops will be good enough. The two routes that we modified were the A line going out to the airport and Route 2. So I am going to let things simulate for a little while so that we can see where these shake out and adjust the number of buses necessary on these routes if needed. But I see one more thing we got to change. We got to make the Chuckle Shuttle the shuttle. That was a great comment as well. Now, after letting it run for a few minutes, you can see that the A line is at about 46% capacity, jumps up to about 63 at some points in time. So I think that we could leave this as is, but I'm going to bump one vehicle off this line because I just don't think we need more than that. And this should be perfect for this line. And then taking a look at Route 2, we've got some interesting things going on here. Basically, nobody is using this route, or very few people are. There's 21 people on Main Street, one person here on Autumn Street, not all that many. So we're going to revise this down to just one bus. Now, the whole reason that I'm able to do that is I've installed the Transport Policy Adjuster mod. This is a mod that allows you to completely control the number of vehicles on your route, regardless of the size or length of the route. So this is an absolutely amazing mod if you want to have realistic numbers of transit vehicles on your routes. And I got to admit, this likely means that we should go back to some of our older routes and completely revise those. I might do that on a stream or in a future video. For now, I think I'm going to leave it as is, with the exception of this line going to Bailey. This one is incredibly long and I've got to adjust it while I'm thinking about it. So rather than having 12 buses going to Bailey, we're going to have one, just one. That's completely fine. And then the other comment came from Supermod Vainglorious Gaming, who said that it doesn't really make sense what I've done right here at this train station. I've basically turned this into a park and ride, even though most people getting off here would be walking to the factory. So basically, I took the parking lot for the auto factory and turned it into a park and ride. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to call a mulligan on that change and revert this back around. But I do think it is important that we have some parking here at the train station, and I think I have a solution for that. The first thing I want to do is grab the one-way alley and convert this road to be a one-way alley. This has parking on one side of the alleyway which should be plenty here for the train station. I'm going to shift this road a little bit down, which is going to be helpful in a variety of ways. First, it provides a little bit of separation from the train station and the road. So what that means is that people are no longer walking in the middle of a drive aisle. Now they're walking on the side of the road or on the train station itself. Just makes a ton more sense. And second, it takes this road, which was acting as a through route, and really solidifies it as an alleyway. But that means that we've got to change this parking lot. And there are two things I want to do. The first is I want to select all the nodes and segments and just back this thing up just a little bit. Next, I want to delete the invisible connections from the parking lot to this road. And then we'll back this up a little bit more. Now I want to convert this segment right here to not have parking because we get too close to the fence. And then I want to add new connections back into our automotive plant. And I'm going to add one more right here into the back side of this facility. And I'm doing that because I'm going to take this checkpoint and spin it around. Now, this isn't 100% perfect. I can't remember how to change those fence colors, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research on that. But I think that this is a much more logical configuration, and it makes this feel like an enclosed facility, which is ultimately what we were going for. And with our fixes complete, let's take a look at our final benchmarks. I've allowed about 4 months to simulate, and I couldn't just sit here and do nothing while that was happening. I made 3 off-camera improvements, and before I show you the numbers, I wanna show you these changes. Starting right here, where we had 4 of those public markets from the Northeastern USA pack, I decided to replace them all with just general commercial from that exact same pack. So basically no change outside of a visual change, but I wanted to point out that I did it. Second, I scoured the entire build for areas like this, where we have UK mixed residential, and I've eliminated 100% of them. And something really interesting happened when I did that. We lost 12,000 population instantly, and then everything rubber band back to where it is right now. The final big change, we were seeing lots of traffic backing up, so I decided to make this a 4-lane arterial leaving town. Everything is functioning appropriately now. I also decided to add a sidewalk on the backside of this train station and add an invisible path. I noticed that there were steps back here, so it only made sense to have this path. And the benefit of this is that rather than crossing the train track, they're able to actually get on before they get to the train station, before crossing the track, and without creating a whole bunch of traffic backups. So this change has made this train station a ton more efficient. And ultimately, I took a look at where these people are coming from. It seems like they're coming from all over the industrial park to leave town. So this is probably a much more comfortable solution if you were to actually work in this area too. So that brings us back to looking at our numbers and our demand. So a quick drum roll, please. Boom. We now have office demand once again. We're a shade under 140,000 in population, which means that this is the largest that Magnolia County has ever been, which is really exciting. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. We've been adding a lot to the county over the last little while, and it never made sense that our population was shrinking. You can see in terms of our education distribution, things are much more in line with what you'd expect to see in a community of this size with a university. And I think we're in a much healthier place. This is why our demand has rebounded. In fact, when we take a look in here, you can see that we're no longer seeing the warnings that we don't have enough high-skilled labor availability. That's actually one of the good things we have going for our community. But I do feel like I have to point this out. This is InfoLoom, and what you can see right here is that we've actually got way more jobs than people. That's not unusual. The city I live in is actually like that. But what is not good is that we've got a lot of open positions, 849, and they're really skewing towards those highly educated and well-educated positions. So I think that that is why we're not seeing our demand quite as high as it could be. Now, those might get filled with people from the outside region, but that means traffic, and it also means that it's more expensive for those people. So we probably just want to add some housing in the near future. And then finally, I wanted to show you our population graph over the last 5 years. And you can see that 5 years ago, our population was exploding as we were growing the city. And then we started to kind of just hover in the same spot. And then as we redeveloped Paradise Bay, our population began to plummet until right here. This is where we removed all the zoning, did our citizen entity cleaner, and things started improving. Now right here, you might think that this is where we use the citizen entity cleaner. It's actually not. This is where we had that crazy population decline after I've removed the last of the UK mixed residential. And after that, we've seen this gigantic spike right here in terms of population. And I think that looking at just the last year makes this even more evident. We had that crazy population decline, and then things have been on the upswing. And on the balance, it feels like we're ready to continue with the story of Magnolia County and like things are moving in the right direction. One other exciting externality of today's build is that we're now making a ton of money per hour, which means that we can really cut taxes if we want or take on some major infrastructure projects. And all that money comes at a time where we have a new city council very excited to spend it. But that's going to happen on another day, because for today, we're going to leave it here. And I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me, troubleshoot Magnolia County, and figure out how to save the build. And for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.